Hi, how's it going, everyone, and welcome to the Debutify podcast, the premier e-commerce podcast brought to you by Debutify. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and today I'll be talking with Marin Ištvanić, the senior media buyer for Inspire Brands Group. For the past 7 years, Marin has gone from freelance contractor to head of performance at Inspire, a boutique agency working with a handful of selected clients while providing services for paid social advertising. Aside from the agency, he's also a partner at a few in-house brands he helped scale and then exit. In the last 12 months, he spent over $40 million on Facebook ads. Today, Marin and I will talk about maximizing the potential of Facebook ads and media buying as a whole. Here's my conversation with him now. Welcome to the show, Marin. How are you doing?
Thank you, Alex. Pretty good. It is early morning here in Croatia, but I'm ready for this podcast.
It is here too. It's about 5 a.m. here right now. Why don't we get started with the softball? What is your primary role for Inspire Brands Group?
So I'm head of performance at Inspire. That means that I'm kind of taking care of other media buyers that are handling the clients' ad accounts. I do work on some of the ad accounts, some bigger ones that are spending, 20, 30K a day. I'm still kind of in the trenches in the ads manager, but mostly I'm kind of the guy that's creating a strategy for a client that is kind of on the call and that is helping our media buyers to execute that strategy.
And you were a senior media buyer in the past, correct?
Yeah, I still am a media buyer, but as I said, just for those kind of larger clients that I started with them working with when they were spending just a couple of K. So we scaled them to 10K, 20K, 30K. So we worked with them for several years. So it kind of makes sense to continue to work on those ad accounts. But I'm kind of slowly transitioning myself from the role of the media buyer because you're limited with the time. You can just do a handful of ad accounts at a certain point. So that is why I'm kind of evolving to the role of strategist, doing these calls and talking with the clients.
No, that's great. And I've read, definitely not doing a couple K anymore. You're pretty active on Twitter. I think you give a lot of really insightful strategies for free on Twitter. You've spent over $30 million on Facebook advertisements throughout your career.
No, it's exactly this year. So this year I spent over 30.
This year you spent $30 million on Facebook advertisements. That's even more insane to me. So what are some of the strategies that allow such lucrative spending, and how do you maximize the efficiency of, such ads?
So I would say that you have to have a proven market fit. So basically we usually take on the clients that usually have a proven market fit. So we are just there to kind of amplify their ads because it's easier this way. When you have a client that is struggling to get any traction, it's hard to scale. There could be so much things that are kind of not aligned. Maybe don't have right email sequences. Maybe their conversion rate is bad. But when you have something dialed in, we are there kind of to put the fuel on the fire and to scale it. I would say that apart from product market fit, great product is one. Definitely that is kind of the biggest factor in having success on Facebook ads. When you have a great product, it's everything is easier. Then we can play with the different offers. Potentially there could be buy a product, get a free gift, buy one, get one, stuff like that. But in terms of Facebook ads, proper structure is kind of a foundation. So you need to kind of always use conversion campaign because Facebook is pretty good at giving you what you want. If you optimize for video views, you will get only people that will watch your video. If you optimize for add to cart, you will get only people that will add to your cart, but they would not end up buying. We will always want conversions. That's why we optimize for purchase. We separate our campaigns in 3 or 4 different levels. So basically level 1 is prospecting. Those are people that never heard of you. Then we have re-engagement. Those are people that watch certain percentage of your video or engage with your ad. And then we have website visitors. And then we have 4th layer is existing buyers. So you want to treat those segments of audience differently. For someone who never heard of you, you want to kind of show a product demonstration video. You want to show how the product is working, what are some benefits. Then in the re-engagement phase, someone potentially watched the video, but he's not convinced it would work with him. So potentially you will show him, a testimonial video or a review video that someone else already bought the product and he had he benefited from buying that product. Then potentially someone could click on that ad, landed on your website, but he would potentially not ended up buying. We don't know what's stopping them for buying. So in that segment, we want to kind of like change our messaging to be focused more on the objection handling, potentially tackle that we are offering free shipping, fast shipping, potentially give a discount. So basically, in what different level of funnel the customer is, you want to treat him with different messaging and with a different creative.
What I'm hearing you say is you got to attack the beast from different angles, if you want to get as many conversions as possible. Aside from Facebook or Meta, as they're referred to, what are the other media buys that you see an uptick in?
Yeah. So I would say that like Facebook is still the king, at least a channel that is generating the demand. So we have Google that is capturing the demand. So basically it's hard to get like someone new at your website unless they are searching for something new on Google. So like Facebook is generating the demand and Google is capturing it. Like Facebook is still most robust. It still has like most data about the user. We are still seeing the best results on Facebook. What I would say, like Snapchat was okay, maybe 2-3 years ago when it started. It was kind of like a fun new channel, but they had kind of like problems with their attribution because a lot of the conversions were viewed through conversions. So basically Snapchat would claim that sale happened from the Snapchat ad, although like people did not interact with the ad. Pinterest is a kind of like good fit for like only small niche, like some of the clients that are kind of like that fit organically on Pinterest. But I would say kind of like TikTok is definitely on the uprise, especially kind of like in the last year. More people are kind of like on TikTok. They are spending more time on TikTok compared to Facebook. The content is both educational and entertainment in the like same scenario. And like we definitely see some success with TikTok ads, especially for kind of like low priced items, because it's hard to get like someone to buy a product out of the TikTok ad that is kind of like over 150 or something like that. So definitely that sweet spot is, I would say, between like 30 and 70, where we find most success with TikTok ads.
Interesting. I haven't heard Pinterest lately, but I believe that it could be pretty lucrative to niche services, as you mentioned. What about in the opposite direction? So, what are the techniques or media buys that you're seeing less return on, or that you would probably recommend that businesses or brands to probably stay away from nowadays?
So I would say that like since the iOS update, which kind of like affected the whole landscape.
And that's the iOS 14.5 update, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Since that update, users have option to kind of like opt out of tracking. That is kind of like making things harder, both for us advertisers and then potentially affecting the users and the ads that they are seeing. So like people are saying like ads are annoying, but like for me, ads are annoying only if they are not relevant. If I want to see something that I'm interested in, it's not annoying to me. It's kind of like beneficial for me. So since people can opt out, our retargeting is kind of potentially affected because we could potentially show an ad to a user that already bought. So that's one thing that kind of we are having some struggles with. The other thing, like again, due to the iOS, lookalike audiences are kind of affected because Facebook has less data to work with. Its ability to kind of like find those kind of similar people is affected. And honestly, we mostly stopped using lookalike audience since the iOS update.
Interesting. That's very interesting. And I know that since you are so active on Twitter, you kind of post what you've been learning throughout the process. I find that extremely helpful. And it seems that people are engaged with it. And I wanted to ask if, the last 2 or 3 weeks from about Black Friday to Cyber Monday, if there's anything during that time that you have learned that you'd be willing to share with our audience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Black Friday and especially like Q4 is kind of like the biggest event for any media buyer and for any kind of like DTC client. There are some clients that kind of like earn, 50% of their revenue only in November. Majority of our clients started early with their offer. So as we are approaching Black Friday, the CPMs are increasing because like even the people that are not advertising usually, they want to start advertising during Black Friday because it's a great chance for them to kind of like get good results and get cheap clients. I would say that brands that started earlier, so like mid-November with early Black Friday offer or something like that, they had most success with, because they kind of like captured those customers earlier. That's one thing. So basically start earlier. The second thing is like create a bundle of your product. So basically, if you do just discounting, you're kind of like eating your margins. But if you bundle, I don't know, 2, 3 of your products, even though you offer a discount, you're increasing your AOV. So your margins are not affected so much. So definitely brand that started earlier and brand that kind of like combined it with bundling did best. What I would say, what was surprising this year, that like CPMs were not so high as expected. So like last year, we had like crazy high CPMs. We expected same this year, but luckily that did not happen. Obviously, conversion rate was higher. So we managed to squeeze kind of like most out of our retargeting and existing buyers audience. So that was a great technique. So basically, you're building your retargeting audiences the whole year. And when it's time like for Black Friday offer, you want to retarget to them. You want to kind of like show your offer. So that worked pretty well, because we saw like even with a smaller budget, we saw pretty high returns. And then like thing that I would say worked best during Black Friday was Advantage Shopping Plus campaign. That is a new feature that Facebook introduced like maybe a couple of months ago. It relies more on the AI and the automation. You don't have like so much nuances to pick on the ad set level settings. It is just kind of like you pick demographics and you pick country, and Facebook kind of like suggests what are some of the ads that potentially could work great based on some of we don't know exactly what parameters. It's kind of like a black box, but that definitely work best for majority of our clients. So basically Facebook is kind of like getting better. They were kind of like pretty hit with the iOS, but this new feature, it kind of like worked on all of my accounts. I'm pretty excited about continue to use it.
That's awesome. That's very insightful. And what I'm hearing you say is, start early, target, retarget. And, I've heard in past interviews that you've done that, CPMs have gotten more and more expensive. So you actually were, what I'm hearing you say is lucky that it wasn't as expensive as you expected.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they did increase, like if you compare November to October, or if you compare last week of November to the first week of November, they did increase, but not to the extent the
margin wasn't as large.
Year. Yeah.
Sure. No, that's very fascinating. And speaking of margins, you've also, stated in the past that maximizing efficiency for a brand isn't just about scaling winners anymore. It's also about cutting losses early, and cutting losses as early as possible, really. So, how do you determine when to cut your losses on an ad set, or when not to?
Yeah, so basically that's a pretty good question. Based on the data that kind of like client provides, and based on their margins, we have a hard number that says like what is our target ROAS. Some clients want to be profitable on the first sale, so they want to kind of like hard numbers. Some clients, they know they kind of like can afford themselves a higher CPA because they are counting on the LTV and people buying again and again. So basically, we can afford ourselves to spend more, potentially lose on the first sale, because we know that user will buy like 2, 3 more times. So basically, that's kind of like most important number, which we look in the ads manager. So we make our decisions based on the ad set level, but like if we are kind of like above that metric, we increase the budget. Basically, we scale. If we are not, we enter the ad level and we kind of like check how each individual ad is performing. Because sometimes you could have Facebook spending money on some ad that is not getting the good returns, but there's kind of like second or third ad that didn't spend so much, but is having good returns. So we want to kind of like turn off that biggest spender with bad results and keep the other active. So basically that way you are minimizing the losses. You're kind of like checking whether there's kind of like some losers on the asset level that will kind of save you some money. Obviously, you want to kind of like turn off some of the ads that have like, I don't know, 2-3x your average CPC, because like even if they did not spend much, because it would be hard to be profitable with that CPC. So basically, there are some early metrics, early indicators, and soft metrics that we are looking. We are looking cost per add to cart because that's a pretty good early indicator whether the ad will kind of like generate the sale. We know what is kind of like average percentage of people that add to cart ended up buying. So we know what is our target cost per add to cart, and then we can kind of like make a decision whether it makes sense to keep this ad active or not. Also, if we are using video, we are checking some soft metrics like thumb stop ratio or hold rate ratio. So basically, thumb stop ratio is kind of a custom metric that tells you how many people out of which your ad got served, how many people watched 3 seconds. Because attention span is getting shorter, especially with the TikTok. So people are kind of like not even watching the whole video. So basically, if I see that only 10% of people watch 3 seconds, I know like something is wrong at the beginning. So I want to do another variation to increase that hold ratio. The thumb stop ratio. I would say that like 25% is a pretty good indicator that you have a strong hook. But if you have a strong hook, then you want kind of like get people to watch the rest of your video. So we check a hold rate. How many people that watch 3 seconds watch at least 15 seconds or 75% of the video? That gives us a pretty good indication whether people are kind of like interested in the video. Because sometimes you could have some kind of clickbaity hook that promise something unbelievable, and then people kind of, okay, this is interesting, but then you do not provide the value and they stop watching. So basically, we are watching how people are interacting with the video after they interacted with the video, whether they added to cart, and like how often, and obviously how it is affecting our CPA, and then for ROAS. ROAS is obviously the most important metric, but you want to check those early indicators because that's a sign that potentially you can cut some of the losers even earlier.
No, that's all extremely valid advice, especially in the video age that we live in. You know, I don't know how many times I've seen what feels like a very clickbaity video that's about 3 minutes of content stuffed in a 20-minute video because that's what the algorithm likes, is it likes a lot of fillers sometimes, despite the fact that I don't. So I wanted to ask you about, search engine optimization more specifically. So I think it's pretty evident that search engine optimization is an important tool in e-commerce marketing for a brand. And you're a bit of an expert on the subject. I would consider more than I am. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs that are less familiar with SEO and how to get the most value from it?
So I would not say that I'm an expert like in SEO. I'm an expert, I would say, in paid social, especially in Facebook ads. But like, how they say, you have to be like a T-shaped marketer, kind of like know everything about all the other channels, but then like specialize in one. So I know a bit like about SEO. It is important to kind of like have a lot of the articles that are kind of like speaking about the topic that people are searching for. So you don't want to have like a blog post that is just talking about the product. You want to have a blog post that is talking about the problem and how to solve that problem, even without like offering your product as a solution. It can be kind of like mentioned, but focus doesn't need to be around the product. It needs to be kind of like more educational style. That would kind of like get you more clicks, because when you check the SEO, most people are like kind of searching how to something, how can I do something. So basically, if you provide the value in terms of the education and actually explain how to resolve a problem without mentioning that your product, you could get quite a traffic organically from the search engines. Also having those backlinks. So basically, if you're connected with kind of like some publications that are featuring your article somewhere, that helps, because that's a sign that other authorized pages are kind of like recommending you. Facebook count that as a sign of quality content. So I would say in terms of the SEO, you want to kind of like write the content on the like specific search terms that is most educational.
Most educational. Solid advice. Now, what would you consider to be the most important factor in the success of a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand?
That's a tough question. I would say that like definitely the product can kind of like either make or break your store. Like I saw like heaps of brands that think they have like a product that is kind of like awesome and people would like it, But if the people are not interested in, there's no need for the product. Like you could do all of the researches, like, and all of the kind of like fancy marketing and put like a lot of the money. But if there's no need for the product, like nobody will buy it. So like product and the product market fit is definitely kind of the most important factor in terms of the success of a DTC brand.
The product, and speaking of product, our listeners can't see this, but you're actually sitting in front of two beautiful soccer jerseys and a logo for your new brand, Football Supplements. Would you like to explain that to our listeners a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's a football because we call it football, and the name of the brand is Football Supplements. I know you guys are calling it soccer, but for us, it will always be football. So as I said, like I'm a head of performance at Aspire. We are a boutique agency focused on paid social. But besides providing services of paid social, we have few of the internal brands. And one of those is the Football Supplements. It is a brand that we started a couple of months ago because we noticed there's a gap on the market. So basically, there are a lot of products aimed for, I would say, bodybuilders, people that are going to gym, triathlon athletes, marathon, and stuff like that. But there is no product specific for football players. Considering the football is the biggest sport, and like most people are watching the football, there's most people playing football. We saw opportunity there, so we created a range of supplements that are specific for a football player. So that those generic pre-workouts could help you kind of like pump more in the gym, but our products, they have some ingredients that can help you kind of like think clearer, have faster reaction, which is more important in the game of football. So we created a range of products. At the moment, we have 4 products. One is a pre-workout that you take before the game. One is a extra time energy gel, which kind of like you take on the halftime to help you with your kind of energy levels. We have isotonic, which helps you kind of being hydrate. And we have a recovery, which is kind of like post-workout formula, which help you kind of like replenish the things that you lost during a game. Because like football is a specific game, you kind of like spent, I don't know, you ran 10 kilometers per game. It's kind of very exhausting. So you need to kind of like recover from that. So those are our 4 main products. Besides that, we are looking to add creatine, multivitamins, but these are the 4 that we initially launched. We have a partnership with the Atletico Madrid, which is one of the 10, like I would say, best football clubs in the world. And we have some of the players like Ivan Rakitic, which is a Croatian national football player, as our ambassador.
That's a really cool ambassador to have. And when it comes to football versus stuff like baseball or American football or stuff that the US is more familiar, you're totally right. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you need products that cater to that a little bit more. And, to my knowledge, you've always been a major football fan, and that you actually were kind of considering going pro in that. Is that accurate? Could you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's accurate. I played football since I was like 6 years old. That was just about the time when Croatia won a 3rd place at the World Cup 1998. So like the whole country was crazy about football. So was I. So I started like playing with 6 years old. I played until last year. At a certain point, I was like almost went pro. I was like semi-pro. I played in the 2nd Croatian division, but like we just about like when I had some opportunities, I kind of like stumbled upon digital marketing, and I had like more success with it. And we all know how like it is tough to kind of like get into that 1% of a professional player that can kind of live out of playing professional. So I kind of like decided to go in this like digital marketing space. I still play like once or twice a week with my friends. But yeah, I'm not anymore into like those professional waters.
That's all right. So, before we wrap up every episode, I like to ask professionals in the e-commerce space what they do to, promote a healthy work-life balance. A lot of professionals in this space work long hours and stressful hours and bring their work home with them mentally. And, since you're no longer playing football, I'd like to know what you do in your free time.
So I'm like pretty much a movie and series buff. So I watch like lot of the series. I mean, besides that, I still kind of like go to play football with friends like twice a week. And besides that, I do some gym trainings like twice a week. So I'm still kind of like taking care of my body, because like I got used to it. Because like 20 years, I was like doing training sessions every day, sometimes 2 times a day. So I still have that kind of like need to do a training. I feel better when I do a training. Besides that, I kind of like try to have a regular sleep schedule that is kind of like very important, especially when you kind of like have some intense working hours. But I kind of like try to manage to sleep at least like 7 hours, because like sleep is the best recovery you can get. So also I'm a man of routine. So that helped me to be kind of like in top of the everything. I like to have like proper sleep schedule. I like to do my training. I like to like check my emails. I like to optimize the ad accounts. So that helps me with kind of like, I feel better like when I'm in a routine.
I definitely need a routine as well. I wish I was more disciplined, but it takes me a while to find a routine. But once I get it, it's extremely helpful. And, you know, I'm a movie buff myself. Maybe we'll have to get together and create our own little movie podcast or something.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
You know, before we wrap up, I just wanted to say I really appreciate your time, and good luck with football supplements, and good luck to Croatia in the World Cup. You know, they just beat, Japan this last week on a nail biter. And, by the time this posts, who knows, they could have taken the trophy home. So, good luck to you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind wishes. I hope that like by the time this podcast launches, we'll be a world champion. And thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Not a problem. You have a good one, Marin. I'd like to thank my guest, Marin Ištvanić, for joining me on the show, and tune in next week when I talk with Colby Flood, the founder of BrighterClick, about go-to-market strategies and creative branding. For more information about Marin, you can follow him on Twitter at @IštvanitchMarin or connect with him on LinkedIn. And to learn more about Inspire, you can check out their website, inspiredigitalgroup.com. That's our show. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you come back to find new episodes being published every Tuesday. Until next time.